Welcome to the Thriving Outside the Box podcast. Join me, Dr. Kimberly Grocher, a licensed psychotherapist, executive coach, and yoga and mindfulness meditation teacher, as I shed light on the stories of leaders and entrepreneurs across industries who not only dared to create their own path in their careers, businesses, and lives, but have found a way to do it while thriving mentally, physically, and spiritually. I hope you walk away with the inspiration to do the same. Welcome back to another episode of Thriving Outside the Box. I am Dr. Kimberly Grocher, your host, and I'm very excited to have you with me for this episode, which is a little different. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge, but I hope it ends up being helpful for you. So I've had this idea about wanting to create content around self-advocacy in some form, whether it was my podcast, whether it was a social media post or something, because in the last few months, all the time, really, but really like self-advocacy has been showing up in many different ways in my life as a theme. And a lot of that has to do with who I work with, because it's also showing up in my clients' lives. And when I went to Paris for a solo trip in December of 2025, I recorded a voice note and I wanted to document what my experience was in that moment and what was coming up for me in that moment from the heart without a whole lot of prep. And I recently found that clip and I was like, oh, it's very vulnerable, but maybe I'll share it. Maybe it could help somebody. So I'm including it as kind of like the main point of this episode. I hope you find it helpful, and I'll come back at the end to wrap it up. All right. So trying a new thing tonight, preparing my podcast episode on self-advocacy. So these are some notes that I want to take down. So came up with this idea during my trip to Paris when I had to do quite a bit of self-advocacy. So first night, had to switch my room, was put into a room, great room, beautiful room. Really liked it, very spacious by even US standards, which if anybody's traveled to Europe, you know that European hotel rooms can be on the smaller side. But anyway, loved the room. And then all of a sudden I hear boom, boom, boom. Didn't know what that was at first. Thought maybe it was somebody upstairs being extra heavy. Go a little bit later toward the hotel myself, just looking around, figured out that the gym was actually next to my room. Now, when I had checked in, I did ask for quiet room away from the top two floors, which are a restaurant, a bar, and a club. I said, I'm here for basically a work retreat, and so I need some quiet. They're like, sure, the seventh floor should be great for you. You're far away. Whatever. Go and find out that not only is the gym next to my room, but the weights are the closest equipment to the wall that my room shares. So when they drop the weights, the vibration. And I will say this hotel has pretty good soundproofing. So I was disappointed. It's like, okay, am I going to deal with this or what? And then I go, it happens throughout the night. I did go say something to somebody like, oh, my room is right next door. Could you not drop the weights? I don't even think he understood me, but whatever. The long story short, the next morning I woke up and at 7 a.m., boom, boom, boom. And I wanted to go back to sleep because I already didn't have a good night's sleep that first night for all the reasons. Jet lag, period started, and I just couldn't stop thinking about my dad. And of course, my brother-in-law and all the things that happened and kind of replaying those last few months of their lives. And, you know, I let it all come because obviously that was the grief wave I needed to ride that night. So by 6 o'clock in the morning, I was ready to go back to sleep. And then an hour later, here this comes. I was like, oh my gosh. So I woke up, well, I got up, got dressed, and basically went and told them I would need another room. Um, which they did. They told me to, have my things by the door, ready to go, and they would move me as soon as a room became available. I asked them, did they know what room? They didn't. They said it's whichever one clears out first. And I said, look, I will wait for quiet. I said, if there's a room that will probably be quieter than others, I'll take that. I went out and I did my thing. And when I came back, I had a new room. So I was grateful for that. And then um, now there's some noise in the hall now. Some chatty Cathy's in the hall. Anyway, so then I had to pause because it's like 10:03 here. So anyways, I yesterday I went out, walked like 7 miles. Oh, I went to the Christmas markets over by Tuileries. Um, I did some ambling around before I found my way back to my hotel. And I was just exhausted yesterday. And then after I got back, went to the wine bar and realized I was in this beautiful hotel in this amazing city. Oh, before that, I had gone and asked to speak to the manager because this new room, I wasn't too sure about it. It still felt maybe a little noisier in terms of people noise because the other one I was towards the end of the hall. And this one I'm kind of like in the middle. So I had lost trust, wasn't sure, and just wanted to understand what my options were if I decided to leave in the morning and go stay at a different hotel. And the staff were great. They were really wonderful, had a nice conversation with me. And they were like, if you decide you want to leave in the morning, look up booking.com's cancellation policy so you can decide if there's anything else we can do in the meantime. Just let us know. But yes, let's see how tonight goes. Yeah. So, anyways, sitting at the rooftop bar, realizing that, like, yes, it's a beautiful hotel. Don't get me wrong. I would have changed it if I needed to. But just how beautiful the city was, the fact that I had made it here, the fact that I've been wanting to come back here for so long over the last 2 years. And just so many things happened in life where it just didn't feel like the right time, didn't feel like the right time. And then in October, it was like, I'm being called, I'm being drawn to this place. I need to go. And I put it together. And I'm here by myself. When you work for yourself, finances are always a concern, but it worked out. It's working out. And so while I was thinking about how I advocated for myself, it just also kind of felt like so many messages I received lately. So it was a theme that I was talking to many of my clients about in sessions. I was like, okay, this is coming up a lot for everybody, self-advocacy, advocating for themselves. Then I was listening to a sermon by Dr. Jamal Bryant. He's the pastor of New Birth Cathedral in Atlanta, Georgia, or Stonecrest, Georgia, outside Atlanta. And he did this powerful sermon on sticking up for yourself. Which, believe it or not, if you know me as an adult, you would be like, I'm not sure that would apply to Kim. But if you've known me for most of my life, you know that I've done some work to get to this place. I remember in preschool, the teachers told my parents, you got to teach Kim to speak up for herself and stick up for herself. So it's been a journey. And then we had this situation with Con Ed. Anybody that lives in New York and has to deal with Con Ed has some idea of the frustration that happens when they have to do any kind of work. Long story short, I had to turn up the self-advocacy because they were about to leave my house without heat in the middle of December in New York. Anyway, got that resolved. But it's just these constant messages around sticking up for yourself, advocating for yourself, whether I am helping other people figure it out or doing it for myself. And so, right before I left for Paris, my stylist, my hairstylist, she asked me, how do you know to do that? How did you learn to do that? How did you learn to put your words together and what to say? And I'm like, dawned on me, I'm like, I learned from watching my dad. My dad advocated for himself, he advocated for us as a family, and he definitely advocated for me and my sisters. And I can honestly say that I am so blessed to have the father that I have because without a doubt, growing up as an adult, whatever, I knew 1000% my dad had my back. That if it came down to it, my dad was taking it on for me. And there's so many things about my dad that I miss. But as a girl, as a woman, as a daughter, the loss of that protection was one of the things I felt the most when he passed. And there are a lot of people in my life who love me, who I know have my back, but nobody will ever have my back the way my dad had my back, unconditionally. And this trip helped me realize that I do that for myself. I can do it. I do it. And no, I don't think it means that like I need to fight every fight and I can't, take a step back and let somebody else handle it. That's not what I'm saying at all. But just recognizing that I had that, it was instilled in me and I can do that. And so one of the things I think also like as somebody that's creating your own path, again, whether that's a business, whether you're figuring something out in your career, doing something totally different, whether that's just your life, you're setting up your life in such a way that's very different than what you've known or what you've been exposed to. Learning to advocate for yourself and also being okay with advocating for yourself is so important. And it is not something that's learned overnight. It is not something that stops. Like sometimes we think once we've learned something, or I got the lesson, or I got the skill, that's it. It keeps coming. You keep having to do it. And learning to do it with grace, learning to do it from a place of calm and steadiness um, is golden. And also, it helps you with your relationship with yourself and trusting yourself. Oh, that was a lot. So I would just say, if I were to leave you with some tips on advocating for yourself, is one, trust your intuition. And I'll talk more about that maybe in another episode. But trust your intuition. Know that when something doesn't feel right or isn't right, it's okay to address it. Like, even though that morning I recognized I was tired, I was jet lagged, I was cramping, I did not feel the best. I was not operating off of, proper sleep. But I recognized that you're staying in this beautiful hotel, 5-star hotel at this price point. And even if I wasn't, but still, like, no, you do not have to put up with banging weights next door to your room that are going to wake you up in the middle of the night or in the morning because this gym is 24/7. And people that usually stay at places like this, fitness is probably a big part of their lifestyle, right? So, so they're going to be using the gym. Um, so no, you have to speak up. It's not unreasonable to expect that. There's going to be somebody else that doesn't bother them. Then that's great. Then that's the room for them. But this is not the space for you, not on this trip, not with what you're trying to do. And I followed that intuition. And I had moments where I was like, I'm not trying to be a pain. And one of the bellhop men who was so kind to me the whole time I've been here, very helpful, he was like, listen, no, like, if that's not working, that's not working. We're going to figure it out. You know what I mean? And I was able to talk to the staff, talk to the managers, very calm. They listened and they took care of it, and it was no drama but I still had that residual like, well, I don't want to be a troublemaker and I don't want to be that person. And then I had to realize like, girl, that person is the one that gets what they need. That person is the one that gets what they want. So we're going to be that person and it's going to be okay. So here's to being that person, speaking up for yourself, sticking up for yourself, recognizing that that is not synonymous with confrontation all the time, and empowering yourself to do this on your journey. Yeah, maybe when I finish this, I will do all the steps. I think I only talked about intuition. Intuition, taking action, and working with whatever guilt or shame comes up. And then also finding a way to do it from a place of finding your calm in the chaos, whatever that means. That doesn't mean you're not emotional, but maybe that means that you figured out a way to channel that so that you can express yourself um, in a way that you feel good about. Okay, I hope that brief snapshot into my experience in Paris was helpful, maybe a little funny to you, maybe some parts of it resonated. And if it didn't, that's okay too. If you're judging, that's okay too. But I did just want to kind of go back through those points I mentioned. One, really cultivating your intuition, which again is probably a whole nother episode, a whole topic. If you work with a therapist or a coach or a mentor, that might be something that you think about honing or working on. Most of us are not taught to listen to our intuition. We're not really spoken to about it explicitly. So it can be a foreign concept in adulthood, right? But intuition is also, it's an important personal skill, but it's also an important professional skill and leadership skill. So really being in touch with your intuition and recognizing and being able to discern it from other input or emotions or circumstances is a life-changing skill. The other thing, taking action, that was number 2. So actually acting on it, like advocating for yourself and coming from a place of advocacy, what needs to be addressed, and finding the courage, right? Or working to build the courage to do that, to take that action. And then also not after, but a lot of times simultaneously, there's the working with whatever guilt or shame comes up, because it's not going to go away completely. And a lot of times we wait for things to completely resolve or dissolve before we do a thing. And sometimes the work is doing the thing while we work on that. So working with whatever guilt, shame, negative self-talk comes up, but still moving through taking action. And finally, empowering yourself on your journey. And that can look a lot of different ways, right? It already takes a lot of courage to do your own thing, whatever that thing is, or do it a different way, right? Again, whether that is building a business, whether that is navigating a different path in your career, whether that is creating a lifestyle that looks very different from anything else you've ever been exposed to or anybody around you. That takes courage to do that off the bat. So recognizing that this self-advocacy is not just something that needs to be done, but it's a way of empowering yourself, right? It's a way of, for yourself, looking at how you treat yourself and how you allow yourself to be treated. And so empowering yourself can mean getting additional assistance in this area. It can mean leaning into the examples of your life, like noticing people that advocate for themselves or advocate for others, right? And what that looks like, coming from a place of like strength and groundedness and confidence, which is very different than like kind of an entitled, I don't know how to do this for myself, or this is what I'm owed. I think they carry very different energies. And I do want to acknowledge that having those examples sometimes is hard to find. So I recognize not everybody had a parent like I had that really demonstrated that and really encouraged that from a very early age in me and my sisters, right? I recognize that not everybody has that example in their home, right? but maybe you have it in a mentor. Again, maybe you have it in a friend. Maybe there's somebody in your organization or in your life, or even like, maybe people you listen to on podcasts or on TV that you really admire their advocacy skills, right? And so leaning into those examples, does it have to look exactly like that? No, it doesn't. It's going to look like you, right? It's going to be your way of doing things. I mentioned a sermon, earlier that I've shared with a few people, non-Christians, Christians, that they found it really helpful. But there are also a lot of other sources out there, so find sources that speak to you and kind of remind you and give you those messages that, like, this is a part of life. This is a part of taking care of yourself. This is like that self-care 3.0 and 4.0 that I tell my clients about, right? Like, yes, doing all the, the walks, the running, the spas, the nice trips, those things are really nice, but this is like self-care, right? Taking care of yourself by advocating for yourself and speaking up for yourself. One thing I like to always add is that it doesn't always mean that you're going to get exactly what you want or the way you want it. And I think that's an important piece. And I think that also is the difference between an entitlement or coming from a place of I'm bending you to my will, which again is very different. Would you like it to go your way? Yes, of course, right? But also the act of self-advocacy is it in and of itself. So even if things hadn't worked out with that utility company, it was still really important for me that I did that, because to sit with that for me and know that I didn't speak up for myself, and not just for myself, I was also thinking about there are other people in this neighborhood that probably wouldn't advocate for themselves, right? And so, or not able to, or whatever their circumstances are, that are also going to be sitting here in the middle of December without heat for an issue that's not their fault. So for my own integrity, like, I needed to do that. And so whether or not it actually happened is a whole different situation. And I still didn't get everything I wanted from that circumstance, right? So recognizing that it doesn't always mean it's going to turn out your way or in your favor. And there's a way to cope with that. But sometimes we refrain from self-advocacy if we don't feel like we're going to get exactly what we want and the way we want it. Sometimes the lesson or the meaning is in, can I advocate for myself, right? Can I demonstrate to my own self that I'm worthy of advocacy? All right. I know this episode was a little different, but I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have comments, feel free to email me, Kimberly@vervenvision.com. You can also check me out on Instagram at Dr. Kim B. Grocher, or on LinkedIn at Kimberly Grocher. All right. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Thriving Outside the Box. I hope you have a wonderful week.